Number 7. The Al Nasla Rock Formation. This Al Nasla Rock Formation is a great example of how nature is a serious force to be reckoned with, being a giant, solid boulder that looks as though it was split down the middle with the aid of an alien's laser weapon. Far from a story about extraterrestrial antics, the Al Nasla Rock Formation is actually thought to be forged from completely earthly origins. The 20-foot-high rocks sit upon two natural pedestals that make the rocks appear as if they're almost levitating, in perfect balance with one another, as they don't lean into their small divide and touch. It's hard to imagine that the Al Nasla Rock Formation came about by accident, but most scientific theories to explain its existence center around the natural weathering process being responsible for its perplexing formation. Found in the Tema Oasis in Saudi Arabia, the Al Nasla Rock Formation is a petroglyph, arguably one of the most photogenic in the world. Petroglyphs are images made by carving or engraving the surface of a rock. Depictions of Arabian horses, ibexes, and humans can be seen on this rock formation surface. Exactly when the carvings were committed to the stone isn't known, but the sandstone rocks are believed to date back thousands of years. There are several theories surrounding this rock formation's perfect split down the middle. One is that the rock sits on a fault line and that the split was first created as the ground beneath the rock shifted, causing it to split in half at a weak point. The crack created by this activity could have been something of a wind tunnel for sand-laden gusts sweeping across the landscape. As grains passed through the gap over thousands of years, they may have effectively sanded down the uneven crack to create a perfectly smooth surface. Another theory is that freeze-thaw weathering may have caused the crack when in ancient times water got into a small crack in the then connected sandstone rock. This water may have then frozen, causing it to expand and exaggerate the crack. Once the cool period came to an end, the divisive ice would have thawed and melted, leaving behind a perfectly straight gap dividing the sandstone rocks. Number 6. Hierve el Agua. Sometimes nature creates counterfeits, a fish that looks like a plant, a fruit that looks like a vegetable, or in case of Mexico's Hierve el Agua, a rock formation that looks like a waterfall. Sound unusual? Well, yeah, it is. At a distance, this enormous rock structure looks exactly like a frozen waterfall, a seeming impossibility in the hot temperatures of San Lorenzo Albarradas, the town closest to the rock. If you come closer to the formation, however, you'll realize that your eyes have played a trick on you. The rocks are in fact mineral deposits on top of a limestone mountain. On the mountain's ledges sit two freshwater pools noted for their medicinal properties, and springs that are saturated with calcium carbonate and magnesium. Subsequently, the water from the pools drips down through the cliffs, depositing the minerals onto the side of the mountain. Now, over time, these deposits have accumulated in staggered columns that look an awful lot like icy cold waterfalls. The name of the place, literally the water boils in Spanish, comes from the way the water bubbles as it travels through the spring. The Zapotec people who lived in the area more than 2,000 years ago revered these pools and directed the spring waters to irrigate their plants. The canals created by these people have petrified into this unusual rock site in the subsequent passage of time. This result, which took thousands of years to create, is essentially an above-ground stalactite that hangs more than 50 meters from the bottom of the valley. The waterfall misnomer is perpetuated by the name of the rock formations, dubbed salt waterfalls or petrified waterfalls. Oh yeah, and the park's hours aren't the most consistent, so make sure to call ahead before setting out to see these unusual falls. Number 5. Yuncheng Salt Lake. When summer comes, the glassy water of Yuncheng Salt Lake in China's Shaanxi province turns a shocking rainbow. From above, the lake looks like a painter's palette with dabbles of magenta, green, and aquamarine across the landscape. Down on the surface, a yearly ritual has taken place for millennia. Workers slowly and painstakingly shovel piles of salt that are left behind as the water evaporates. These hunks of white crystal have helped grant Yucheng a place of cultural and political esteem, and the chemical reactions catalyze an otherworldly landscape that enchants locals and phone-wielding tourists alike. Known as China's Dead Sea for its salinity, this vast lake has long been the focal point of Yuncheng's culture and economy. Chinese historians estimate that locals have consciously harvested salt from the lake for about 6,000 years, and ancient human remains found in the area suggest that people may have realized the water's salty benefit even further back. By the 6th century, Yuncheng Lake was responsible for a quarter of China's overall salt production. Local lore reports wars fought over possession of the lake, and nearby temples are dedicated to salt gods. The lake is connected to that signature tang in Shaanxi's food, which is replete with salty soy sauce. Today, most travelers come to the lake not to worship the salt gods, but to marvel at the landscape's surreal charm. As opposed to the Dead Sea, which is filled with high concentrations of chloride that make it hostile to most forms of life, this lake is filled with sulfate, which supports a lush ecosystem. In the summer, algal blooms turn the water technicolor thanks to a type of algae species that changes the color when it reacts with salt. In winter, when the temperature dips below 23 degrees Fahrenheit, the salt forms crystals of mirabilite, also known as Glober's salt, transforming the landscape into a twinkling winter fantasy. Yuncheng salt was traditionally harvested for culinary use through a 5-step process that the Shaanxi province has officially recognized as a piece of the region's intangible heritage. And since the 1980s, however, producers have abandoned that process and pivoted towards industrial harvesting. Locals hope that the influx of visitors interested in marveling at the lake can also help inspire the preservation of local salt harvesting traditions and the rich ecosystem that's given rise to an extraordinary natural beauty.